You've been betrayed, broken, and disappointed. Again and again. But what if I told you? It's possible to reach a point where no one and nothing can ever hurt you again. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because you become untouchable. That's what we're solving today. How to build a mind that pain cannot pierce. There exists a form of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't fight, doesn't even need to prove itself. It is the quiet, unshakable power of a person who cannot be emotionally conquered. Most people spend their lives reacting to love, to betrayal, to insult, to loss. They are puppets of their own emotions, and puppets can always be broken. Emotional detachment as power, to reach a place where no one and nothing can ever hurt you again. You must first understand the nature of pain. Pain is not born from events. It is born from attachment. When you care too deeply about how others perceive you, when your peace depends on how someone treats you, or when your sense of worth is tied to another person's approval, you have already surrendered your power. You have placed the keys to your emotional kingdom in someone else's hands. The moment you do that, you become vulnerable. Not because the world is cruel, but because you have given it permission to strike you. Emotional detachment is not coldness or apathy. It is strategic self-preservation. It is the art of remaining unshaken in the middle of chaos, of walking through betrayal without bleeding. The one who is detached is not heartless. They simply refuse to allow their emotions to be weaponized against them. They feel everything, yet nothing owns them. This detachment is not born of weakness, but of understanding that emotions are volatile forces, and whoever controls them, controls you. Most people live like open wounds. They react to every insult, every look, every word. Someone's disapproval ruins their day. Someone's praise makes them feel alive. They are addicted to emotional validation, enslaved by the constant need to be seen, loved, or accepted. This dependence makes them fragile, easy to manipulate, and easy to destroy. The more they crave affection, the easier it is to hurt them. The more they seek belonging, the more they fear rejection. Their happiness rests in the hands of others, and so their suffering does too. To rise above this fragility, one must learn the discipline of emotional distance. It means you stop allowing the moods of others to dictate your peace. You stop expecting loyalty from the disloyal, compassion from the ruthless, or fairness from a world that has never been fair. You accept reality as it is, unfiltered, indifferent, often cruel, and instead of fighting it, you adapt to it. You understand that the world is not obligated to treat you gently. Therefore, you build yourself in such a way that gentleness becomes unnecessary. Emotional detachment gives you clarity. When you are no longer reacting out of anger, fear, or need, your decisions become pure strategy. You can see situations for what they are, not what your emotions wish them to be. This is how leaders think, how survivors endure, and how manipulators thrive. Emotions are storms. They cloud judgment, distort truth, and create illusions of control. The detached mind, however, stands above the storm. It sees clearly while others drown in feeling. There is immense power in being calm when others panic. When people cannot provoke you, they lose control over you. Your silence frustrates them. Your indifference disarms them. They thrive on reaction, and when you give them none, they starve. Detachment makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability is a weapon. No one can manipulate a person whose emotions are sealed behind a wall of composure. This does not mean you must abandon empathy or connection. It means you engage with others without dependence. You give love without expecting it in return. You care for people without allowing their chaos to infect your peace. You can stand beside betrayal and remain unmoved, not because you do not feel, but because you have mastered the art of not needing. When love becomes a choice rather than a necessity, you regain control. When approval becomes irrelevant, you become free. To be emotionally detached is to reclaim sovereignty over your inner world. You decide what matters and what does not. You decide when to feel and when to remain still. The world may throw stones, but none will reach you, because you no longer place yourself, worth within their range. Detachment transforms you from a creature of reaction into a creature of reason. It makes you unbreakable, not because you have no heart, but because you have trained your heart to obey your mind. Most people confuse detachment with numbness, but numbness is defeat. It is running from pain. Detachment is mastery. It is confronting pain, studying it, and ensuring it never has power over you again. It is not the absence of emotion, but the command over it. When you reach this state, insults lose meaning, loss becomes manageable, and rejection becomes nothing more than redirection. You see the world as a chessboard, not a battlefield, and you move with precision instead of panic. In a society ruled by emotional chaos, detachment is rebellion. It is the quiet revolution of self-control in a world addicted to reaction. Those who learn this art become untouchable. They walk through the same storms as everyone else, yet remain dry. They are the few who have discovered that the highest form of power is not control over others, but control over self. Control through perception, pain, fear, and humiliation. These are not the true enemies. They are illusions, shadows that exist only because the mind allows them to. The real battlefield is not the world around you, but the one within your perception. Every wound you have ever felt, every heartbreak that broke your peace, began not with what happened to you, but with how you interpreted what happened. The same event that destroys one person can strengthen another. The difference lies not in circumstance, but in perception. Control perception, and you control everything. The human mind is both the architect of strength and the author of misery. It builds prisons out of harmless words and turns minor slights into lifelong wounds. You suffer because your perception tells you that something unjust has occurred, that you were wronged, betrayed, or disrespected. Yet none of these concepts have any real weight outside your mind. The world itself is neutral. It does not care about fairness, morality, or your personal comfort. What hurts you is the meaning you attach to it. Once you stop granting meaning to the actions of others, their power over you dies instantly. Perception is a lens, and most people live their entire lives peering through one clouded by emotion. They see betrayal as catastrophe, criticism as attack, and rejection as proof of worthlessness. They bend reality to fit their insecurities. The world becomes their reflection, chaotic, cruel, unpredictable. But when you master perception, you realize that none of this chaos is real. It exists only because you allow it to. A calm mind can look at the same storm and see opportunity, strategy, or indifference where others see disaster. To control perception is to reshape reality itself. The insult that once cut deep becomes mere noise. The betrayal that once consumed you becomes a lesson. Every event transforms from something done to you into something that simply is. You stop taking things personally because you understand that people act according to their own nature, not yours. A liar lies because it is his nature. A coward betrays because it is his instinct. Their behavior is a reflection of who they are, not of what you deserve. When you truly grasp this, you become immune to offense. You no longer waste energy on outrage, because you see that outrage is submission to the perceptions of others. The mind is a master of distortion. It will convince you that every slight is an attack, every silence a rejection, every change a loss. But if you stand back and observe, you begin to see how perception creates unnecessary suffering. Someone ignores you. The untrained mind says, "They do not value me." The disciplined mind says, "Their silence reveals their priorities. Now I know where to place mine." The difference between weakness and strength is not what happens to you, but what your perception decides it means. You must learn to use perception as a weapon. When others see obstacles, you see openings. When they see insult, you see information. The one who interprets reality with control and detachment always has the advantage. You can turn any humiliation into leverage, any loss into wisdom, any pain into power. People will think you are unbothered, but in truth, you are simply aware. Aware that perception is the ultimate shield. Mastering perception requires discipline. You must question your thoughts as they arise. When you feel anger, ask, what story am I telling myself? When you feel hurt, ask, what meaning have I given to this? Most of the time, you will find that your suffering is born from a narrative you created, not from reality itself. And if it was created, it can be rewritten. The mind that can rewrite its story cannot be conquered. Control through perception is the art of choosing your reality. You decide what deserves your reaction, your energy, your emotion. When someone tries to offend you, you simply refuse to perceive it as offense. When life tests you, you decide to perceive it as training. The world becomes your servant because it can only reach you through your perception. And you alone hold the key to that gate. This is how the powerful move through life untouched. They are not emotionless, they are editors of their own experience. They select what to believe, what to feel, what to ignore. Others are tossed around by circumstance. They stand unmoved because they understand that perception, not pain, rules the world. The illusion of dependence is the quiet chain that binds people to their suffering. It is invisible, subtle, and often disguised as love, loyalty, or trust. Yet beneath its pleasant mask lies weakness. The kind that makes a person crumble when others withdraw their affection or approval. Most people do not realize that their misery is not caused by betrayal or rejection, but by their own dependence on the things and people that betray and reject them. They cling to others for identity, for validation, for a sense of purpose. But dependence is a bargain where you trade your freedom for comfort. And that trade always ends in pain. To depend on others emotionally is to hand them the power to define your state of mind. If their words are kind, you feel worthy. If they withdraw, you fall into despair. You become a reflection of their moods, a servant to their opinions. You may think this is human nature, that connection requires dependence. But that belief is the very illusion that keeps you weak. True connection can exist without bondage. Love can exist without slavery. Respect can exist without need. But dependence poisons them all. The moment you need someone to stay, to praise you, or to understand you, you have already become their prisoner. The world feeds this illusion from the beginning. Society teaches dependence as virtue, dependence on approval, on belonging, on relationships, on systems. You are told that being alone is failure, that validation from others is success. From childhood, you are conditioned to measure your worth through comparison. You chase recognition, fearing obscurity. You chase affection, fearing abandonment. Every pursuit becomes a desperate attempt to escape loneliness, yet loneliness grows stronger the more you try to kill it with others. Because dependence can never cure emptiness, it only deepens it. Dependence blinds you. When you rely on others to define your peace, you stop seeing reality as it is. You begin to tolerate disrespect, to excuse manipulation, to justify betrayal, all because losing the person feels worse than losing your dignity. You tell yourself that you are loyal, but in truth, you are enslaved. You remain in places that drain you because you fear the void that independence brings. But that void, that silence after you let go, is not emptiness. It is the first breath of freedom. It is the moment your mind begins to rebuild itself without the noise of dependence. The illusion of dependence also exists in power structures. People submit to authority not because they respect it, but because they fear standing alone. They seek leaders, idols, saviors. Anyone who promises certainty in a world that offers none. But the moment you look for someone to rescue you, you have admitted weakness. No savior can free a person who will not free themselves. Power cannot be borrowed. It must be created within. The one who learns to stand alone becomes more dangerous than any army, because he cannot be bought, bribed, or broken. Dependence also hides in smaller forms, in habits, in possessions, in routines that give comfort. You think you own them, but they own you. The more you cling to comfort, the less capable you are of survival. The one who cannot live without luxury is already conquered by it. Freedom begins when you no longer need what once seemed essential. To be independent is not to reject all pleasure or connection, but to engage with them without fear of their loss. You enjoy what comes, but you remain untouched when it leaves. The illusion of dependence thrives on fear. Fear of being unseen, unloved, forgotten. But fear itself is a liar. It tells you that you will be nothing without others, when in truth, you are diminished because of others. Every time you look outward for stability, you betray the strength within. The mind that needs constant reassurance can never lead, never create, never rule. It is trapped in an endless cycle of needing to be fed what it already possesses. When you strip away dependence, something remarkable happens. The voices that once controlled you grow silent. You no longer beg for attention, because you see how cheap it is. You no longer chase validation, because you understand how fragile it makes you. You begin to act, speak, and decide from a place of inner command, rather than emotional starvation. Others sense this, and their influence over you fades. They may try to guilt you, shame you, or withdraw affection, but none of it matters, because you no longer draw oxygen from their approval. Dependence is an illusion because no one truly needs anyone to survive. They simply believe they do. The mind creates imaginary debts, to family, to lovers, to society, and spends its life trying to repay them. But freedom begins when you recognize that no one owes you anything, and you owe no one the right to control your peace. Calculated coldness, there is a kind of strength that does not roar, does not weep, and does not plead to be understood. It moves quietly, observing, calculating, and waiting. It is the strength of calculated coldness, a discipline of mind and emotion that allows you to move through conflict, betrayal, and chaos without a single tremor of panic. Most people misunderstand coldness. They see it as cruelty, indifference, or arrogance. But true coldness is not born from hatred, it is born from control. It is the ability to think clearly when everyone else is drowning in emotion, to stay still when others act out of fear, to decide with precision rather than impulse. Calculated coldness is not a lack of feeling. It is the art of feeling without letting feelings dictate your fate. Emotion is the weakness that betrays most people. It exposes their intentions, reveals their insecurities, and makes them predictable. Anger makes them reckless, love makes them blind, and fear makes them obedient. But the one who masters coldness remains unreadable. Their silence becomes their weapon, their composure their armor. They do not react, they respond. They do not rush to defend themselves, for they understand that the need to defend is the confession of vulnerability. In every confrontation, there are two kinds of people, the emotional and the deliberate. The emotional person fights to be heard, to be seen, to be right. The deliberate one watches, studies, and strikes only when necessary. The cold mind is never in a hurry. It waits for the perfect moment, because it knows that patience breaks more enemies than rage ever could. To be cold is to move like ice, slow, silent, unstoppable. When others burn themselves out in fury, you are still, conserving your fire for the exact moment it is needed. Coldness allows clarity. When your mind is calm, you can see every hidden motive, every subtle manipulation. You can read people like open books while remaining unreadable yourself. Most are slaves to their emotions, revealing their loyalties, fears, and weaknesses through their reactions. They show anger when insulted, desperation when threatened, sadness when ignored. But the one who shows nothing controls everything. People cannot attack what they cannot define. They cannot predict what they cannot read. When you master coldness, you become an enigma, and the human mind fears what it cannot understand. Calculated coldness also protects you from self-destruction. Passion without discipline leads to ruin. It makes you chase what should be ignored and fight battles that should be avoided. Coldness keeps you grounded in logic when emotion demands chaos. It teaches you that not every insult deserves an answer. Not every betrayal deserves revenge, and not every opportunity is worth pursuit. It whispers the truth that power is not proven by reaction, but by restraint. You become powerful not because you dominate others, but because you dominate yourself. The world respects calm authority. People may not love the cold, but they fear it. And fear commands more obedience than affection ever could. Those who are cold are not heartless. They have simply learned that emotions are luxuries, and luxuries are dangerous in a world built on manipulation. The cold mind does not fall for flattery, for it recognizes its purpose. It does not crumble under criticism, for it knows the value of silence. It does not beg to be understood, because understanding is irrelevant to survival. To be cold is to become untouchable. When you can endure silence without discomfort, solitude without desperation, and insult without reaction, you rise above the emotional battlefield where others destroy themselves. You stop being a player in someone else's game and start controlling the game itself. Others will call you detached, but their accusation is a confession. They wish they could be as free from their own storms as you are. Calculated coldness is not about rejecting emotion entirely, but about mastering its use. You feel deeply, but you decide rationally. You do not suppress anger, you store it until it becomes useful. You do not deny sadness, you study it until it reveals its lesson. You use every emotion as fuel, but never as guidance. Emotions serve you, they do not rule you. That is the difference between the ordinary and the powerful. The ordinary are consumed by their feelings, while the powerful consume their feelings to strengthen their will. In time, coldness becomes a shield that cannot be penetrated. You stop seeking warmth from others and begin generating your own from purpose, from discipline, from focus. While others are distracted by passion or despair, you move with quiet certainty. Your calmness becomes intimidating, your silence unsettling, your composure unshakable. The cold mind does not break under pressure. It thrives in it, for it knows that heat only refines steel. Dominion over self tied dominion over all. There exists a truth so simple that most spend their entire lives overlooking it. Whoever rules himself, rules the world. Dominion over self is the foundation of every form of power. The ability to command one's thoughts, discipline one's impulses, and direct one's emotions is the invisible crown that separates the weak from the formidable. You cannot master others until you have first mastered yourself. Every failure, every downfall, every humiliation a person endures begins with the inability to govern their own mind. The undisciplined self is the greatest tyrant, and those who fail to conquer it will forever bow before their own chaos. Most people live as servants to their inner storms. They are ruled by anger, lust, fear, greed, and pride, not realizing that these emotions are the true chains of subjugation. They wake in the morning already enslaved by whatever feeling greets them first. If someone praises them, they rise. If someone insults them, they crumble. They imagine they are free because no one commands them outwardly, but inwardly. They are ruled by every fleeting emotion that passes through their minds. They are puppets of their own impulses, and every external force knows exactly how to pull their strings. To gain dominion over self is to reverse this order. It is to become the master of your inner world, to make emotion a servant of reason, and desire a tool of strategy. The one who commands himself cannot be manipulated, because he has already stripped the world of its leverage. Praise no longer seduces him, and insult no longer wounds him. He moves by principle, not by mood. His decisions are deliberate, his silence intentional, his patience weaponized. In a world where everyone reacts, the one who governs his reactions becomes invincible. Self-mastery is not achieved through suppression, but through understanding. You cannot command what you refuse to study. The disciplined individual examines every emotion, not to indulge it, but to trace its source. When anger arises, he does not explode, he observes. When fear whispers, he listens without obeying. When desire tempts, he questions its cost. This internal observation builds control, and control becomes command. The mind, once tamed, ceases to act as an enemy. It becomes an ally, a weapon sharper than any sword and more enduring than any army. Dominion over self creates balance, and balance breeds authority. The one who is calm when others panic becomes the natural leader. In times of conflict, when emotion blinds the masses, his clarity becomes power. Others may possess strength, wealth, or influence, but without self-control, these things decay into ruin. History is filled with rulers who lost empires not because of external threats, but because they could not master their own appetites. Power in the absence of self-discipline is a fire that eventually burns its wielder. When you govern yourself, you begin to govern perception. People are drawn to those who cannot be shaken. They mistake composure for superiority, and their awe becomes submission. The calm individual gains influence effortlessly because others instinctively trust steadiness over chaos. This is the silent advantage of self-rule. You do not need to demand respect, you command it through restraint. Authority is not granted, it is recognized. The one who owns himself forces others to acknowledge his dominance without a single word. Dominion over self also dismantles fear. Fear thrives in those who lack control, because they are at the mercy of their imagination. They fear loss, rejection, humiliation, all projections of a mind that cannot command itself. But when the mind obeys its master, fear becomes an echo with no power. You stop fearing outcomes because you trust your ability to endure them. You stop fearing people because you no longer depend on their approval. You stop fearing change because you have trained yourself to remain constant amid chaos. This is the highest form of stability, not built on external security, but on internal strength. To rule oneself is to possess a kind of sovereignty that no empire or institution can match. It cannot be taken, bribed, or destroyed, because it exists entirely within. It is the only power that endures when all others collapse. The disciplined mind, the restrained tongue, the controlled temper. These are the marks of true royalty. The world bows not to arrogance, but to unshakable composure. The one who governs his emotions governs outcomes. The one who governs his impulses governs time. The one who governs his thoughts governs destiny. Dominion over self transforms life into strategy. Every response, every silence, every movement is intentional. You no longer wander blindly through experience, you orchestrate it. You move with the precision of someone who knows that control is the only true freedom. When you can dictate your focus, you can dictate your fate. When you can command your emotions, you can manipulate any situation. The one who is master of himself can face betrayal with calm, chaos with clarity, and loss with dignity. His strength does not depend on circumstance, because his power is internal, absolute, and unassailable. The greatest victory you will ever achieve is not over others, but over yourself. When you master your mind, emotions, and perception, the world bends before your will. No betrayal can break you, no insult can reach you, and no loss can shake you. You become the calm in every storm, untouchable, unbreakable, undeniable. If this truth stirred something within you, then you are ready to rise beyond weakness. Subscribe now, and join the journey where power is not given, it is taken. More stories await for those bold enough to rule themselves.